Welcome to the Boulder Rotary Club. Today we convene for our second electronic virtual meeting in our club's 101 years of existence. Like our first electronic meeting on March 20th, this is still the place to be on a Friday afternoon in Boulder County. Now, please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance and the four-way test. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
United States
and to
of
the
America,
republic,
and to the
there we go,
republic for which it stands.
Join me in the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, and do, is it the truth?
Is it fair?
Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Say that every time.
Okay. Okay. In case you didn't know this about me, I'm a big fan of Clint Eastwood movies. And the Clint character that I've been remembering this week be Heartbreak Ridge. There's Sergeant Gunny. As a battle-hardened Marine veteran of the Korean War and the Vietnam War, Sergeant Gunny finds himself frustrated with the attitudes of the recruits in the new platoon of Marines. He is expected to train for war, even though they are living in a time of peace. Sergeant Gunny is also frustrated that he can't relate to his ex-wife, for whom he still carries a torch. Because Gunny's platoon aren't taking their training seriously enough, he teaches them the meaning of the Marine Corps mantra, adapt, improvise, and overcome. Like Sergeant Gunny Highway's platoon, we are also learning to adapt, improvise, and overcome. The fact that we are meeting here today proves it. We don't know how long we're going to have to continue adapting, improvising, and overcoming. The only thing we know is that we will, and we will do it together. Now, I yield the screen to Cassidy Murphy, who will remind us how to manage the Zoom technology, which we are using for today's meeting. Cassidy.
Thanks, John. I don't think that I am like Sergeant Gunny, so I won't be yelling at you new Zoom recruits. Like anything, this is a learning curve, and we're still learning. As you can tell, the sound goes in and out, but it will be as good as we can. The good news is, if you have heard my voice or John's voice, then you're connected, and that's great. I want to give you a couple of things to look out for today. One of the things Mike and John said was that as you come on to the meeting, you'll be muted. And that's because sometimes people make noise inadvertently, tapping on keys or hopefully not crunching on potato chips, but it happens. And so we've muted everybody unless you're speaking. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a bar, and it has some important things on it. One of them is the controls for your microphone and your video. The little microphone, if you tap on it, it goes mute or not mute. And you can stop your video by tapping on the video icon on the bottom. Another important one is the chat function. It looks like a little speech bubble. And if you tap on that one, it'll give you a side with the script of everybody who is on the meeting, and you can talk to people privately, or you can talk to them as everyone. If you're listening to the speakers and you think about a question you'd like to ask, if you type it out to everyone, we'll make sure that Carl gets that and that we can ask the speaker. And you can also talk privately if you'd like. During the presentation, if the internet goes a little wonky for you, you can turn your video off so you can still see the speaker, but it may save some bandwidth for you. And if the internet speed overall goes down, we may turn the video off on everyone except for the speaker so everyone can still see and hear. If you have any questions and you're not able to do the chat function, please feel free to give me an email. I'll be watching that too. My email is Cassidy, C-A-S-S-I-D-Y, @murphybrady.com. That's Murphy, M-U-R-P-H-Y, Brady, B-R-A-D-Y.com. And I'll make sure that those get passed on as well. Okay, at the top of your screen, you should see all your participants, and you can cruise around a little bit and see, get really familiar with Zoom while you're here. I think that's it.
All right. Thank you, Cassidy. And I'm noting that we have set a new world record for participation in our virtual meeting. We're at 87 and holding. So let me tell you why about the program today. Our program is Crisis Response in Education, Remote Learning in the Age of COVID-19. And we feature 3 outstanding education leaders from our community in Boulder County. The program will go until about 12:55. Then we will move into a 10-minute segment on coping with COVID-19, a practical guide to living under our shelter-at-home requirements. We expect this to be a regular feature of our virtual meetings, at least for the foreseeable future. This week's focus will be on food resources, led by club member Bill Anderson. We will conclude our program with a recognition or celebration of birthdays and a special poem. And that conclusion will occur at about 1:10. However, all of you should feel free to stay on after I conclude the program to ask questions of any of our panelists. And the topic of our program today is a timely one, and I'd like to turn it over to Carl Kurtz to introduce our panelists.
Thanks, John. I'm excited about today's program on how our teachers and students are adapting to learning in the brave new world of COVID-19 and our lineup of speakers. Boulder Valley School District Superintendent Rob Anderson will lead off our program. Rob is a club member and has a doctorate in education from the University of Central Florida. He will speak for about 10 minutes about how public schools in Boulder are responding to the challenges of homeschooling, and then we'll take 5 minutes of questions. Rob will leave the program at the end of his time. Next up will be George Moore and Michelle Carpenter. They will each talk for 8 minutes and will field questions together at the end of their remarks. George is leader of one of the premier private schools in Colorado. He earned his undergraduate degree at Pomona College and a master's in education from Harvard University. Michelle is a longtime and beloved member of our club and an outstanding teacher at Boulder High School. She has a BA from Boston College and an MA from University of Northern Colorado. But before turning the program over to Rob, let me just add a few words or support what Cassidy was saying about how we will handle questions. We ask you to submit your questions in writing through the Zoom chat function. As Cassidy instructed, click on the chat button at the bottom center of the Zoom screen. Mike Simpson sent a note saying if you're on an iPad, it may be at the top. Even if you're not planning to ask a question, you might want to open the chat window so that you can see the flow of questions from others. With assistance from Cassidy and Mike in the background, I will monitor the chat questions. I will select from the questions that are submitted and may either ask them of the panelists on your behalf or call on you to pose your question online. Wow, Rob, I can't fathom what your life has been like over the last month as you and our amazing teachers reimagine and recraft education for the young people of Boulder on the fly. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today to bring us up to date on how Boulder Valley School District is adapting to this crisis.
Oh, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to switch over to a quick slide deck to kind of share with everyone. I hope everybody's staying safe. For those of you that have kids in our district, I hope that home learning is going well and that they are doing okay. Certainly an unprecedented time for our school district and for schools across the country, as in a matter of a few short weeks, we've really changed everything that we do. You know, education is it's a people in-person business, and to switch to a format where we don't get those in-person interactions and delivering content online has been a pretty big shift for us. I'm really proud of the way that our team and our community have adapted, and so if you'll bear with me as I try to get to the beginning of our presentation. Oop. And so as we think about how we've been reacting over the course of the past several weeks, it truly is a partnership. I can't say enough great things about our partners at Boulder County Public Health, about Broomfield Public Health, Colorado Department of Education, and the Governor's Office have all been fantastic in helping support us during this time. We've had to make a lot of decisions with not a lot of time, and their partnership has been fantastic for us. I would tell you the first and foremost, we've been really focusing on communication and doing that in a lot of different ways. I've been communicating directly with parents probably 3 times a week. We have stood up a website that'll allow us kind of as a place for folks to go when they need more information that's more of real time. We have actually started a talk show called Let's Talk Education, where we are taking on critical topics for parents and doing actually live call-in shows. And I've been sharing videos as appropriate with our community in regards to everything that's happening. There's several things that we've been focusing on. First and foremost, as the coronavirus hit our community, I can't say enough great things about our custodial and maintenance crew who have really stepped in and have made sure that all of our facilities were clean and safe in the event we were able to come back. And so lots of work happened there, lots of deep cleaning, and have been really, really appreciative of our team in that regard. As you think about the ability to access online home learning, many of our families, as I know that you all know, don't have access to computers and don't have access to the internet. And it's really been just a huge effort on our part of our team to make sure that we were giving our families and our kids the tools so everybody has the ability to access remote learning. As of today, we've distributed over 7,000 Chromebooks to students and families, and we've done that through multiple distribution events. Our IT departments made sure that computers were cleaned and prepared, and then at 9 sites throughout our district, we were actually able to distribute these devices. And so we feel like this has been a huge success for us. In addition to distributing devices, we've also distributed materials. We want to make sure that for those who don't have internet yet, that we had paper materials. And so thanks to our partners, Impact on Education, who helped provide us school supplies, we distributed 1,500 backpacks filled with printed instructional materials and related supplies at 2 distribution events on March 3rd and April 1st. This has been a huge undertaking and also another great success as we are entering this new world of home learning due to the coronavirus. You know, it's moments like this next slide that make all of the work worthwhile when you have kids writing us just these heartfelt notes about how much it means for us to really take the time and care to make sure that we're thinking of each and every child in our school district. And so just wanted to share that as well. I will tell you that one of the things that we were most concerned about when we were forced to close school was making sure that our most vulnerable families were fed. And I know Bill's going to be speaking about this a little bit later in today's program. We have been distributing food ever since we've closed. We do this on every Tuesday and Thursday from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. And our Director of Food Services, Chef Ann Cooper, has done just an incredible job making sure that we're providing for our families in need. And many school districts are actually doing this, but I would say that what Ann is doing is above and beyond, where she is actually sharing groceries with families. And so in other districts, they may be sharing some grab-and-go meals. Ann has worked with her partners and with our staff to actually on 2 days a week to provide groceries. And so we have protein, fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, bread, pasta, enough to make 8 meals. And we've been distributing these across our district at 9 locations. And each location is serving several hundred families every Tuesday and Thursday, with about 2,000 families, I would say, each and every day accessing this support. And so we feel like this is a huge, this is incredibly important to our families, to our kids, and to our community, and can't thank those folks on the front lines enough. Our food service workers, our folks that work in our warehouse who have stepped in, have been there to distribute food, and it's just been a great way to watch our community come together. And so in addition, of course, we are focusing on learning, and transitioning from in-person learning to home learning I would say that we were more prepared for this than I think we even believed. We started this week launching home learning. I'm sharing some photos that kids have actually shared with us with their new school space, their desk space, so to speak. And I would say that, you know, things have gone really well. They haven't been perfect. I don't know that we expected them to be perfect, but things have gone well. Students have had the opportunity to reconnect with teachers and classmates. We are not using Zoom. We're actually using Google Hangouts and Google Meet as our platform. And every school and every teacher has been setting up schedules so there is this in-person virtual experience for our kids. One of the things that we've been paying very close attention to is how many of our kids are actually participating. And I would say going in, this was a worry for us, that we didn't know how many kids would engage. And so we've been asking our principals, our teachers, to really pay close attention to that. I'm proud to say that on average, this week, approximately 96% of our students have been engaging in home learning, have been actively logging on and completing assignments, and with some of our schools actually at 100% engagement rate. I can't tell you how amazing that is and how proud I am of our team. Now, I will tell you, for the 5%, 4 to 5% that aren't engaging, we are going to continue to follow up with those families. We have a home learning engagement team consisting of our social emotional learning staff, our community liaisons, our family liaisons, and our equity and partnership professionals, who are making sure that we're reaching out to these families, figuring out what it is that they need. Do they need a computer? Do they need internet access? And really just having a full court press to make sure that all kids get an opportunity to access home learning. This is really important to us, and we have tons of, I think, energy and focus on making sure that each and every kid has equal access to what it is that we're trying to support. I have a couple videos. I'm not sure that the videos will play. We have kids that are really, this crisis is bringing about some of their best creativity, and they're posting these incredible videos about how they're reading books to each other. I think we even have the next video slide has a teacher who has a really creative way to kind of share with kids how to get help. And I can share those videos with you all. And we're using the hashtag Altogether for BBSD on social media to really highlight these items. Lastly, I would tell you that our partnership with Impact on Education has been amazing. As soon as we were able to, as we knew this was going to be the crisis that it is, and that we were going to have to close schools, and we knew that we were going to have families in need, Impact stepped up. They've created a critical needs fund to help support our students, both with food insecurity, those who need additional tools and supports. They have been important in making sure that we help to get kids what they need. And so if you'd like to donate, they have a link on their website, Impact on Education. That's the partner we're working with to make sure that we're getting resources to our schools. I'll end with saying that, within our strategic plan, and I had a chance around this time last year to speak to Boulder Rotary around our strategic plan. All Together for All Students is really not just the title of our strategic plan, it's our mantra as we move forward with this crisis, and that it has been really wonderful for me to watch our community come together and work to support all of our students. And so that's a brief overview on how things are going in BVSD. Again, for those of you that are parents, thank you for all of your support and helping your kids access learning. We know that it is not easy, especially those of you that are working and trying to help your kids go through school. If you need anything, reach out to your teacher, reach out to your principal, reach out to me. Anybody in our district is willing to help and support. And so with that, I'm happy to take any questions you might have, and I'm trying to pull up the chat right here to see if there's any questions I can answer.
So Rob, I'll help you out with the questions here. Thank you so much for that presentation. And we're up to 94 participants, by the way, which is about 80% of the people who usually show up for lunch on Friday, which is pretty amazing. I think you said a little bit about volunteering, but Peter Ewing, do you want to jump in here with your questions about that?
So the thing with volunteers, we've had lots of folks wanting to volunteer, and actually Impact on Education was helping us coordinate that. For our food distribution, we've had to instill some pretty strict protocols to make sure that the food that we're providing to folks is safe, and that nobody who's sick is actually volunteering. So at this point, we're not taking volunteers for food distribution. In the event that we do need volunteers, we would work through Impact on Education as the place to sign up, and we push district-wide communications when we need that in regards to volunteers. And so we appreciate everybody wanting to help. We are really trying to do everything that we can to make sure that that we're being very safe, considerate of our employees, and making sure that the food that everybody's getting is safe. And so right now, not many volunteer opportunities around food.
Okay, thanks. Meryl Glustrom, why don't you jump in here with your question?
Okay. As you know, with the pandemic, families are facing health and economic challenges, especially for families in poverty. Teachers can be their only contact in the community. How are teachers supporting parents?
I would say that the approach our teachers are taking is that all of these interactions are a partnership. Parents that are having needs are in touch with our family liaisons and our equity and partnership team. So for example, during food distribution days, for those families that can't drive or get to one of the sites, we have actually had a team that has been dropping food off to their homes. and checking in on their needs. In addition, with technology, we've actually set up a system where for those who weren't able to come and pick up a device, we're calling it IT Prime. It's a little bit of a ripoff of Amazon Prime, but we actually have vans, district vans that are driving to people's homes, dropping off computers, and actually picking up broken computers. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're just filling the void as parents let us know of what their needs are. I would say that as we learn of things, we are jumping in, and every member of our team is really doing whatever it takes to support our families.
Okay, thank you. And John Kotke, can you unmute yourself, please, and ask your question?
Okay, I think, can you hear me, Carl? I think
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, so my question is, it's a little thinking out a month or two, but my concern is for seniors in graduation. Has there been any thought about how that is going to be handled from the district perspective?
A lot of thought. It is incredibly unfortunate what's happening to the class of 2020. Unfortunately, we had to cancel their proms, but I refuse to cancel graduations. And I sent out a letter to our families this week. I couldn't stomach the fact of not celebrating kids as they graduate high school. It's such a milestone and so important. I don't know what it'll look like, depending upon how effective we are at flattening the curve and when we're actually able to bring back our students and our teachers in person. My preference would be to be able to do some type of in-person event, but if not, we'll be looking to virtual events. And we may just have to, so what we've done is we've postponed, we haven't canceled, and we're just looking to see what happens. One of my favorite moments in this job is being able to hand diplomas to all of our graduating seniors. I wouldn't take that from them or their families. And so we're going to work very hard to do something in some way. I was joking, I was on, I did an interview with the Daily Camera earlier this week, and what I told Amy is I don't care if I have to get in my car and hand deliver every diploma to all of our graduates. They deserve a moment. They deserve to be celebrated. So we're going to continue to be communicating on that and thinking about that, but it's not canceled at this point.
Okay, thanks. And Sarah Amirani, this is going to come as a surprise to you. Sarah's our responder today, and we were planning to have her do it at the end of the program, but Rob has to leave us here now. We want to be respectful of his time.
Sure.
So Sarah, you can do double duty if you please, and respond on behalf of the club to Rob.
Absolutely. Rob, we're so grateful to have your time here today and your insights. There are a lot of heroes at work in this pandemic, and teachers and schools are certainly among them. I'm the parent of a senior, so I'm emotional right now. I really appreciated hearing your thoughts there. So thank you for making time today. And as you know, Rotary is very active in the fight to end polio globally. And so in honor of all our speakers today, we'll be donating 100 polio vaccines to get us that much closer to eliminating that scourge. So thank you so much for your help today.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. I wish I could stay on the call. I apologize for having to leave early. We do have a few things going on. We've got several meetings today. I've got an opportunity to speak with Representative Neguse on how he can help us at the federal level. And everybody in our community, I just want to thank all of you for stepping up and being just the incredible community that Boulder is, having our backs during this crisis. And we've got your kids' backs. We're going to do everything we can to make sure they get everything they need during these next 2 months before the summer's out to make sure that they're learning and we're taking care of them. So thanks, everybody. I really appreciate you all. It's been an honor to join you all today.
Okay, let's turn to George Moore, head of Dawson School. George?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Carl, and thanks to the Rotary for inviting me today. I want to echo a couple of things that Rob said. First, the the partnerships that we've had with local and government authorities have been amazing. We felt very supported, well communicated with, and we've been honored to do our part as a school, as citizens of the county and of the state, to help flatten the curve and slow the spread of the pandemic. I also want to express my strong agreement with Rob about graduation. We're strategizing here at Dawson as well about how to honor the class of 2020, hopefully in person, but if not, virtually. That is a priority for us also. I'm excited to talk today about what we've learned at Dawson about remote learning and best practices nationwide and globally, frankly, about how to continue our educational programming. And it's interesting, this is the first week at Dawson that we've been doing remote learning. And I've noticed as a parent of 3 kids that as challenging as it is for schools, remote learning is particularly challenging for our families. And in my household, on Tuesday morning, we had technology challenges, we had tears, and we had frustration. And that was just me. The kids had their own series of challenges with that. But so when I think about how schools and families can best manage these challenging times, I think about 3 priorities. One is connections, and certainly everyone's family connections have been enhanced for the best, for the most part, I think. But also maintaining those social connections outside of the family is important. Number 2, patience is incredibly important. Not only patience with one another, but patience with ourselves and kindness with ourselves, and being understanding that this is a new situation. It is difficult. We're all doing the best we can. We all have the best of intentions. And so to continue to honor that and be patient is important. And then again, as Clint Eastwood said, adaptation is hugely important. And so that's something that I think Rob alluded to, and that we're certainly focusing on in terms of how we do our remote learning here at Dawson, and also support other educational institutions in that. So a little bit about our timeline. In early March, March 5th, we made the difficult decision to cancel our experiential education week, which was to be March 16th to March 20th. And that is a huge deal at Dawson. We have 30 programs that are both local and national, and then we also have international programs. And so the decision to cancel that was a really difficult one. But then our faculty, who's been amazing throughout this whole process, shifted and planned an entirely new week of experiential education that we were going to have on campus. And then, of course, a week later, the governor made his declaration that schools would be closed, or at least to learning on campus through April 17th. So our faculty had to pivot once again, and we decided then to take the week of March 16th to work on remote learning, train, and prepare for the rollout, which happened after our spring break earlier this week on March 31st. And that training was incredibly important and valuable to have that time. We were able to look at best practices from schools that have been doing remote learning for some time, whether they were in Seattle, China, or South Korea. We were really able to take some important lessons from those schools, and also from organizations that have been doing online learning for years. And a couple of things kind of rose to the top for us in terms of priorities. The first was that we can't just take our normal everyday school schedule and convert it to an online format. People's attention and ability to engage through screens like this are challenging, and it's a new situation as well. So less online time and more time offline doing work were models that seem to be best practice. And then another priority of ours, even before we started doing research, but the research certainly confirmed this, was that this idea of connection was really foundational to any learning that was going to happen. And so, at Dawson, we certainly prioritize relationships between teachers and that partnership between students and parents and the school. And so we really relied on that as we were moving to our remote learning format, and making sure that those connections that we had spent months and years in some cases creating provided the foundation for that online learning. And so when we went to Zoom, which was our platform in conjunction with the portal that we already had, we wanted to really make sure we were providing time, not just for learning, but for connection also. So those were our two priorities. In terms of logistics, as I mentioned, we made an agreement with Zoom in late February, anticipating that remote learning was possible, if not likely. And as I said, we combined it with our current portal with which we communicate with students and families. Rob talked a lot about communication. We've also been really emphasizing communication with families and with students. And then as a K-12 school, we're a K-12 school of about 520 kids. We've had to differentiate from different age levels. For instance, lower school kids spend less time doing academics online and more time offline. And their time online is more about that connection with their teachers and with their classmates. And as kids get older, the time online is more academic in nature. We also have been cognizant about the fact that this might last. It's already been extended by 2 weeks, and it might last into May. And so when we rolled out our remote learning schedule, we wanted to communicate a couple things. One, that we were prepared if this did extend for longer, and that we were interested in continuing to adapt and improve our program. And so we've identified 3 phases of remote learning. The phase 1 was intended to go through April 17th, which was the initial end of the shelter-in-place order from Governor Polis. And then we have built-in feedback mechanisms for our families and for our students, so we can learn, how we're doing. Yes, we get some immediate feedback, and we've made some short-term adjustments, but are there things that we can do in the medium term based on feedback from students and families to improve this online learning experience? And to facilitate that, we've also published some remote learning agreements for students, faculty, and families. And again, these aren't new. These are an extension of our normal expectations for students, for faculty, and families. But this is a new dynamic, a new environment. And so we wanted to make sure that we extended those expectations and understandings to this remote opportunity also. And we just added to that really this idea of patience, empathy, kindness, and support for one another throughout this difficult time. And I am cognizant of my 8-minute time limit, Carl. So I'm going to wrap it up here just by saying that we also want to make sure that we can continue to remote learn. We don't want to do it longer than we have to, but we have to be prepared for that. And so we've been cognizant of screen time, managing workloads and expectations, and particularly for our faculty, many of whom have children at home and are not only taking care of our students, but taking care of their children as well. We want to make sure that we support them and put in place boundaries and reasonable expectations for their work with our families also. Thank you again. And again, I'm honored to share the panel with Rob and Michelle.
Thank you, George. We're going to go directly to Michelle now, and then we'll take your questions afterward. So our own Michelle Carpenter.
Hi, everybody. It's so great to see you all here. This is even more folks than I've had showing up for my online classes. So I'm so happy to see you all. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, again, my name is Michelle Carpenter. This is my 28th year at Boulder High School. Love it there, not just sporting the hat. I really do love it there. I'm delighted and honored every day to be a teacher. I'm going to talk about 2 classes briefly today. One class I teach AP Spanish Literature. The students there are worried about, are they going to have an AP exam? What is it going to look like? And so on. I also direct the Adelante program. Many of you are familiar with that. It's for our school's first-generation Latinx learners. Those students will have definitely more challenges than some of our mainstream students. So first, what's the same? We're talking a lot about what's different. And really, when you look at, I know there's a lot of teachers in the house. I know Marty's a teacher. I saw Carl's daughter's a teacher. I saw a few other folks that have certainly had their hands in education, and lots of you, of course, have had your children in education or been college instructors. You know, the same priorities are there, that teaching is an act of love. Teaching is an act of social justice. And we have to keep showing up and showing up patiently with a sense of humor, a smile on our face, and love in our hearts. And that's all the same. We need to deliver meaningful and relevant instruction. That's the same. And we need to, whenever possible, this is the tricky part, create a safe and predictable learning environment. This week, I'm happy to say, has been fairly safe, predictable. We're getting there. So it's been a little bit rough. Monday was definitely a tricky day for everybody, because you have a lot of us teachers that are trying to figure out how to get everybody on the screen. And as I said before, I was working with several of my families and the students to be sure they had internet and computers, and that was a challenge. But anyway, there are certainly some things in common. What's different? I'll show you what's different. I'm going to share my screen with you right now. With a little luck. Here we go. This is a good one. I've had, one of my teachers was complaining that kids were showing up in their pajamas, and I said, I don't care. As long as they're coming to school, we're delighted to have them. But there is some of that, right? Okay, I'm going to show you first what we're doing in Adelante. This is what's called Schoology. This is the learning management system that Dr. Anderson referred to. So our teachers will go in and upload things here. So I'm not going to click on everything, but you can kind of get a feel for, this was, please, there was one day when the kids could come before we shut things down to come get their books and Chromebooks and everything. I'm going to show you the daily schedule because both of our former presenters referred to this. This is the Boulder High daily schedule, and you'll notice it's abbreviated. It's coming. That's the patient part. There we go. So you can see the students are going basically half day. They're odd periods on Monday and Wednesday. And then on Tuesday and Thursday, they have their even periods. It's about an hour. I have to tell you, my kids are showing up on time. It's amazing. I'm super impressed with them. And then on Friday, this is your assessment day and connection. So what I'm doing here on Friday with my Adelante students is every single one of them has to have a one-on-one check-in with me. As you can imagine, they're delighted about that, but I am committed to meeting with them once a week. And then we have these teacher office hours. So I've sent around a form to all of my kids so that they can sign up when they need extra help. I'm going to keep moving. What we did in Adelante, because our kids tend to need a little bit more structure, is we created a schedule for them. They can copy this and create their own. So you'll notice we just put the period in there. We remind them to wake up, eat breakfast, get ready for school. Really important that the adolescents have a sense of structure. And then they can write in here their own things. We remind them again, eat lunch, and then come see the teacher. We're continuing to run our after-school program twice a week. Up at the top, you'll notice that we remind them for family time, to monitor their social media, to take care of their own mindfulness, their exercise, etc. So we're really trying to look holistically at the kids. I'm going to switch now again. And the other thing that I'm really proud of is that we've been able to set up virtual classrooms. So each time that these students check in with us, they'll check in here in Schoology. They'll have a short assignment, like earlier this week, they just had to choose a color that reflected their mood. Again, we're trying to check in with them regularly to see how they're doing. And then if they need help with math, they can go to this math virtual classroom where there's a math teacher as well as 4 math volunteers. And then we have an LA teacher in this room, we have a science tutor in this one, and then this one's mine. So the kids are able to self-select what they feel they need help with. I'm going to go back to the home page, and you can just kind of see some of the other things that we have on there. That's the mood meter I mentioned. They have access to a scientific calculator in case they don't have one at home. Okay. So this is the way we're communicating with kids through this. We can click up here. We can send them a message. I'm going to show you my lit class real quick. This one's much quicker, but I know we have lots of Spanish speakers in the house, so just so you can see, because some of you are probably wondering, how the heck are you teaching Spanish online? Here's a story that we just started reading today, and you can see I'll have a home page here. This is what we're going to do. We had an oral comprehension. One of my colleagues, who's a professor at University of Minnesota, gave an oral speech about this author that we're reading. The kids had to answer questions. I include here the actual PDF, just in case the kids don't have their books at home. It's all there for them. They can read it. It's a play, so we actually acted it out online, which is really interesting. New territory for me. And then down here, you can see that the next one of the next pieces that they're going to do, going through this quick, sorry, is, let's see if it wants to work. Here we go. So then at home, they're going to click on this and they can actually watch the work. Okay. So even though it's a play, it doesn't matter. We acted it out in class, and then they're going to watch it at home, and then they're going to write an essay comparing and contrasting that theatrical work with this mural of Diego Rivera. So that's just, I thought it was interesting to show you all what it looks like from the kids' perspective, how they're accessing their classes. It looks, their page will look really similar to mine. It's a list of all their classes, and they click in, and this is how they're seeing their teachers. The virtual classrooms have been working really well. So I'll wrap it up with that. Thank you all, Rotarians, for your support. It's always, always an honor and a privilege to be part of this club.
Thank you, Michelle, and you make us proud of all of the amazing teachers in Boulder Valley and Dawson School and throughout the education community. So I just got a note from John Sullivan that says we can go a little bit longer with questions here. So I'm going to jump in with one of my own, which is, I read an article recently about how in previous pandemics, societal change occurred. There were lasting impacts of innovations of various kinds. And I know everybody's in the first week of this, but I'd be interested, do you, George and Michelle, think that this period will have lasting impacts on our educational system?
Sure, I'd be happy to start. That's a great question. That's certainly something that we've been thinking about here also. I think it's undeniable that there will be some huge positive benefits from this, our ability to reach students in their homes and to be able to provide programming and connection in a way that some in our society have been doing, but not on this large a scale. So this has been disruptive, and I think in a positive way. At the same time, and again, we're only a couple weeks in, I also see this thirst for connection and being with other people that I think will continue to grow over the coming days and weeks. And so I think there will be an acknowledgement at the same time that we can be successful in remote learning, and that may be a preferred way forward for some. I think the vast majority of folks in our community will see how important it is to be with people and to come together around a learning endeavor in person. And so I think we're going to see that too. that's how I would just give a short answer to that question. And I'll yield the floor to Michelle.
Thanks so much, George. I would say some of the similar things. When I've asked my kids, because this is part of our, social emotional check-in every day, we talk about what are you grateful for? What are your strategies to working through this? And I have to tell you that, teenagers get such a bad rap. I know lots of you have had teenagers in your house and sometimes you just want to throttle them. These kids are like, I've had time to cook with my mom and I've learned how to make Peruvian pastries. I've been able to hike with my dad. My family is so important. They're talking so much about family. They're also talking so much about how grateful they are to everyone they know, really. So I think that whole idea of being able to reflect on how lucky we are to be in Boulder and to have the family and community support that we have, I think that'll be lasting in the kids' lives. I really do.
Okay, John Sullivan had a question. John, it's looking like your video is offline, but please unmute yourself and share your question.
Yeah, I am curious to know what kind of feedback you're getting from the kids who about the effectiveness of the online learning compared to what they're used to.
I'm going to say it's, oh, go ahead, George. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
you go first. Your boot's on the ground, so.
Yeah. I think at this point, the kids are just, like I said, really grateful that learning is going to continue. In terms of effectiveness, I think that, we have to be honest with ourselves. Again, if we're all together and we're all well, that's a big win. If we're all together, we're all well, we're learning to be patient and compassionate with each other, again, I'm going to call that a big win. The content we're probably going to be able to do, I'll give you a concrete example. So in my AP Spanish Lit class, it's usually 8 units. And the College Board that runs AP has said, get through 6. And so I think there's kind of this acceptance out there that this school year is going to be about a 75% win. Colleagues in, world language, it's layered, right? So we're going in with the assumption that the kids that are coming to us, for example, to Spanish 3 from Spanish 2, it's really going to be they're coming to us from 2 3/4, not the whole class. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, I would echo Michelle's comments. We also have AP courses, and so after getting the guidance from the College Board, we've been able to make some adjustments, and I think that's come as a relief to teachers and students that, gosh, they're not going to have to do 2 months worth of work in the last 2 months and cover 2 months worth of content. So a lot of it is, in addition to what Michelle talked about, is that making sure people are healthy and well and connected and taking care of themselves. We do want to push learning forward. I mean, that's important to us, and I know it's important in the school district. It's just sort of managing those expectations and making the right adjustments and checking in with folks continually so that we're making sure that we're on the right track. So we've gotten anecdotal feedback this week that's been positive about the engagement and the connection. I mean, the first day was all about, gosh, it's just great to see everybody. And so not a lot of academics got done on that day, but that was important, right? As establishing those connections. And I think we'll find our footing and make adjustments and as we go forward. And I think it'll be productive and we'll find that right balance.
Yeah, then let's go for a last question to Mike Simpson.
Yeah, I have the privilege of being on the FaceTime with my grandson once a day for a half an hour to give his family a chance to work. And I work with him on his schoolwork and on his sort of daily activities. And I'd really appreciate your suggestions about what is the most effective thing that somebody who taught a lot older students than a 7.5-year-old ought to be doing to help one of those through these times.
I think I'll allude to something that Michelle talked about earlier, but this opportunity to connect with parents and grandparents. This is found time, and kind of regardless of what you're doing in those conversations or what you're trying to accomplish, I think that that connection, that intergenerational connection, is going to be of the most value. And then, if you get some academic work done, great. But, and if you can't do anything else, I think reading to your kids, particularly that age, is important, or reading with them. And so I would just say those two things. Connecting has value in and of itself. And then, the more you can read and connect, or talk about reading, or talk about what's going on in the world, that's all educational in and of itself.
Michelle, you want to add anything?
I agree 100%. That was really great, George. I think, any positive time that we can say and just kind of validate how the kids are feeling. I don't work with young children, but I know my teenagers have some really valid concerns. And sometimes it's hard to talk about with them. So I think just being another sounding board, another believing mirror, that if he says, Grandpa, this feels really awkward, you could say, it does. It really does. We're all in this together, and it does feel awkward for us, and we're going to get there. So I think just, honesty and being a sounding board, that's 90% of it.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, let's call on you for double duty here.
Great. Well, thank you again. As I said before, I think the work of teachers in schools is just heroic, right alongside of the many other heroes in this situation. And I know that the structure and the kindness that schools and teachers are providing to kids right now is so crucial, along with the education, of course. So grateful for that. So again, thank you, George and Michelle, for your insights, and for everybody for being part of this today. And again, along with trying to get rid of coronavirus, we're trying to get rid of polio. So we'll be supporting that today on your behalf. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay, over back to President John and Bill Anderson.
Bill, you're up.
Great. So I just tried to share my screen. Is everyone able to see it at this point? Hopefully.
Yes, it looks good.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I wanted to talk briefly just about food. It's something that has changed. A lot of us are accustomed to eating in restaurants and going to the grocery store and doing things in ways that we've become accustomed to over many years. And there have been some substantial changes in the way that we secure food, our access to food. And so I wanted to talk for a few minutes about that, hopefully provide some practical information that people will find useful. It's difficult in this environment to kind of get a show of hands. I don't know how many of us are still going to the grocery store. I know that some folks have discomfort around that, some feelings that they may be at greater risk, and so folks are choosing to use delivery. My family has been quarantined for about 3 weeks today, with the exception of 2 quick trips to the grocery store with a mask and gloves on. And most of our shopping has shifted to online. We have Gary Kahn and Mark Stern are both on to give an MD's perspective to the extent that folks have questions. But I wanted to share some options for securing food. And then it'd be great if folks have questions, if they could include them in the chat, and we can try and get answers. If I can't answer them, then hopefully Gary or Mark can provide some insight on those questions. And I know Cassidy has grabbed and can probably share via the chat something that Consumer Reports has published to give people some insight as to how to approach food right now. So let's start on grocery delivery. To those that are not necessarily going to the store, what are some options that exist for getting groceries delivered to your doorstep, right? A lot of what we're talking about right now is limiting contact with other people. Amazon offers delivery through Amazon Fresh. I don't know if folks have tried to use this, but I will tell you that my wife and I, for a period of more than a week, attempted to secure delivery and couldn't do it. Finally, a friend of mine said, the reason why you're seeing everything X'd out is because, notwithstanding what Amazon says about releasing delivery times during the day, in actuality, Amazon is releasing those delivery times at midnight. And so I stayed up until midnight and placed my delivery for Amazon just after midnight, and I was able to get delivery the very next day. So just a small tip there, if you'd like to get delivery of groceries and you're having difficulty getting it through Amazon, maybe just set an alarm and wake up at midnight with your cart loaded, and you'll be able to make that order and get delivery. Instacart, for those that are not familiar with it, permits delivery through a number of outlets, including Safeway and Sprouts and Costco, Sam's Club, and Petco for your pets. Altamira Doorstep is actually, full disclosure, my brother-in-law who pre-COVID delivered fancy food to fancy restaurants, and now that food is available for delivery directly to your doorstep. They were initially doing overnight, and now they're doing bolder deliveries on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And it's my understanding that if you get that order in by 10 p.m. The night before a delivery run, you should be able to get that delivered right to your doorstep. So that's a start on the grocery delivery side of things. Let's also talk for a second about prepared food delivery. Now, I will tell you, admittedly, I've had some concerns about this, and I don't know if others have. My family hasn't, in the last 3 weeks, ordered takeout or delivery food, but I guess I'm growing to be a little bit more comfortable around that. And I wanted to identify a few of the options that exist for that. Grubhub, Uber Eats, and DoorDash all offer delivery of food, of prepared food. So some of those are going to be your large chains like a Romano's Macaroni Grill, but there's a fantastic, in Superior, there's a fantastic Indian restaurant that I really miss, and they're on Grubhub. And so as we look for ways to support local businesses, recognizing that restaurants and hospitality industry businesses are really struggling right now, one way to do that, in perhaps the safest way, is to get delivery of food items. Now, perhaps Gary and Mark can hop in with their thoughts on this, but in terms of best practices around going to the grocery store if you have to go and receiving prepared food, what they're saying, obviously some of the stores are offering senior hours, and getting in early when things are at their cleanest is always a good idea. Wearing, I guess the CDC movement, and Gary and Mark can correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like the move is going to be towards everyone wearing masks because of the high number of people who, or in part because of the high number of people who are asymptomatic. Wearing gloves and spraying things down. I think actually in the chat, Chad may be able to share something that CNN had published with Sanjay Gupta about best practices for cleaning grocery items. In terms of how we receive delivery food, what they're recommending is that you remove all of the packaged materials that the food came in and place it on clean plates, and then wash your hands and first discard all of those packing materials, wash your hands and sit down and eat the meal on your plates. Gary and Mark, do you all have any sort of additional advice with respect to those items?
I would just like to say that one of the physicians who did a YouTube video, and there's a number of them on this, including Sanjay Gupta's that was on last night on their town hall on CNN, and also others. You know, if you think about your packaging material that the food comes in as being having glitter all over it, and that you don't want to get any of that transferred to your face, particularly by touching. If you wear gloves when you unwrap these things, you can unwrap them, dump them into a one of your bowls or plates, and throw the packaging away, then discard the gloves. Or others are saying just you can use your hands as long as you're very careful not to touch your face at all or anything else until you wash your hands after putting things on the plate. So those are just a couple of tips. And if the packaging is set down on your countertops and that sort of thing, you might want to make sure you clean it off with a sanitary, with a sterilizing kind of wipe, or else plain soap works great too.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think you have a clean zone and an unclean zone. You start out in the unclean zone, you basically take all the wrapping off. You clean it down at that point, discard anything that you could get rid of at that point, have a trash can available, and then move it to a cleaned section. So that would be it. If people are really very, very concerned, food is not supposed to be transmitting the disease. It's not a food-borne kind of transmission. You know, if people are really concerned, they could heat the food up again. Nobody's recommending that, but that might be something that would just give people comfort.
Thanks, Gary and Mark. I see a few questions have been posted here on the chats.
Can I step in for a sec?
Sure, Valerie, go ahead.
Well, you know, I'm still on the front line with this and get a lot of advice from our infectious disease doctors every day. And they say, you know, you don't have to be like super crazed about possibly getting it from food you're bringing in. They don't feel that you need to like leave the stuff in your garage for a day, like I hear some people are doing. And I think the basic thing of just making sure you wash your hands really, really well after touching the packaging is all you're gonna need to do. You don't need to like sterilize your cereal box or anything like that. So, you know, use common sense, but I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, especially around how long the virus lives on different surfaces, that is scaring a lot of people. I think the hand washing is the thing that we have to push. So yes, if you touch something that wasn't already clean in your home, you need to wash your hands before you do anything else. So thank you.
Thanks, Valerie.
Thank you.
I see a question here from Merrill about food delivery services charging very high prices. I've actually seen Uber Eats and a number of those larger delivery services that are actually running all kinds of promotions and waiving fees right now in order to cause people to support the restaurants and support the drivers. So I haven't seen as much about that, but I think the larger services, like the ones that are listed here, Merrill, you may do fairly well with. Do other folks? I'm just kind of running. Yeah. So one question was about being able to access the links that are listed within the chat. This is just a Zoom point. At the bottom right-hand corner of the chat, you may see 3 dots that run horizontally across the screen. If you click on that, you should be permitted to save the chat. You should see a feature where it says Save Chat. And if there are links that are useful there, then you can absolutely use those. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, so I don't want to run long. But if there are any other questions that we haven't been able to cover, feel free to email me. And if it's a medical question, we'll connect up with one of the doctors to get some help. But in the meantime, everybody stay safe, and look forward to talking next week.
Thank you, Bill. As the oldest of 7 children, I've always been particularly interested in food resources and how to get as many for myself as I could, but I've grown out of that phase of my life. But that was some useful information, and it sounds like there's more than there's more than one option out there that can be used depending on your degree of risk tolerance. And so now I'd like to go to George Russell, who I think we have a birthday slide that's going to come up. And what I don't know is if we have any birthday boys or birthday girls who'd like to say something. There's the birthday slide.
So, happy birthday to all these people. We're going to try to have people say something sometime, if not today, maybe next time, if you would email me at russell303@me.com. Let me know that you want to say something. We may be able to work people, because one thing about Boulder Rotary is the birthday celebrates everyone who makes up our club, and it's very important that they, do the club and have a chance to say something at least one time every year. So with that, I'd like to do a little poem for you that I was talking with Richard Polk, and he said something that kind of caught my ear about he was way too old to die young. And so I wrote this poem. The old cowboy never worried about dying. Shortening his life would be fine. The young guy thought, I pretty near agree, except when it comes to mine. Well, you're young, the old man said. Don't you die before you've begun. I've lived a long life, you see, and I'm way too old to die young. I'm not too old to be happy. I've many a song to be sung. I'm riding a fast horse into the wind because I'm not too old to feel young. Don't waste your time being grumpy. Don't wait for the bell to be rung. Don't be afraid to try something new, because it always makes you feel young. So you see, I'm heading into the sunset, savoring sweet whiskey on my tongue, pushing worries and cautions aside, because I'm way too old to die young. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. Yes, I see some applauding. Good job. All right. So, adapt, improvise, and overcome. And I'm changing my hat out right now because I want you all to know that Boulder Rotary Club is no Mickey Mouse operation. And if you're struggling to figure out how to adapt, improvise, or overcome, then here's a couple of things that our club is doing in the next few weeks to help you adapt. Today at 2 o'clock, you can attend a Zoom meeting with our very own Hans Wick, who is the CEO of Mental Health Partners, who is one of Boulder Rotary Club's partners. Hans will present on dealing with depression and anxiety caused by isolation, like what we're enduring right now. There is a link in the rib with the meeting number on it, but I could There are actually 2 meeting numbers in the rib, and I'm not sure which one is the correct one. Hans, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm here. I think basically you can just click on that link in the rib, and
Okay.
then Nancy, we can always send it out again if necessary, if people just give us a shout out.
Okay. And again, that's from 2 to 3 this afternoon. On April 13th, 10 days from now, you can attend the Boulder Rotary Club book meeting, which will be virtual for the first time in its history. The book that's up for discussion is The Girl with 7 Names, a Korean Defector Story by Hyun-So Lee. And 10 days away, you might have time to still read this book, unless you've been going out a lot with proper social distancing and hiking and riding your bike and that sort of stuff. As far as next meetings go, under the current Boulder Health, the orders from the state, Boulder, and the county of Boulder, we're not going to be able to meet until at least April 24th, 2020 in person, assuming the orders are not extended. However, you may already be aware that the state public health order keeping kids home from school has been extended to April 30th. And this morning I received a notice from the Boulder Public Library System that we can't have our board of directors meeting where we usually have it because they've extended the closure of public facilities in the city of Boulder until April 30th. So I see this as a bellwether for what's going to happen in terms of the extension of the public health order that currently prevents us from meeting at the JCC in person. Fortunately, we already have programs lined up for Friday, April 10th and Friday, April 17th. And we are working on a program for Friday, April 24th. There are details in the rib that was sent out on Tuesday about the April 10th and April 17th program, and you'll be getting more information. So watch those emails and read your rib. And until then, stay healthy, keep the sense of humor, don't panic, and adapt, improvise, and overcome. Have a great weekend. Meeting adjourned. And for those of you who want to stay around for questions, please feel free to do so.
So continuing with any questions people have, I'm not seeing a lot up here.
Because you can Vanessa had a question, or she had her hand up.
Okay.
Capacity, and this is now the meeting has concluded.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, how are you?
Oh.
Free for all now.
Hi, Paul. Logged on. That's good to see, even if she didn't want to.
Kristen, are you?
Okay, Cassidy, did it?
Everyone's
Who
muted again.
did you call on? I missed that.
Yep, it's everyone's muted again. So anyone, it's
Vanessa had raised her hand. That was what I noticed.
Vanessa, are you still there? Please unmute yourself. If not, John Mozeliak earlier had a question. John, are you still on? Unmute yourself if you are, please.
He's unmuted. You should be able to speak. John? Hello?
Maybe we put him to sleep.
I see him. He's there.
I'm muted now, but he's still here.
John Mozeliak. Did you have a question? Maybe it's frozen.
Well, okay, folks, I'm not seeing any other questions, so I think we will go ahead and
Peter had a
drop off.
question. Peter Ewing?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I had a question for Michelle and George. If they're still on, they may not be.
I'm here.
People learn in all different ways, auditory, visual, writing, etc., etc., and people learn at different speeds. How are you able to assess whether the knowledge is being absorbed through online learning? It would seem to me that that would be exceedingly difficult.
It's challenging, and I want to say, Dr. Peter, that we're still early on. You know, we're still early on. But I think especially as a language teacher, this is what we do. We're really in tune with all the different areas all the time. And so I think you could see in that the quick slides I showed you in my AP Spanish literature class. So we did some oral listening, and then they had to answer questions. So there you had the listening piece. We were reading a play. They'll be meeting in small groups tomorrow to discuss some of the themes in the play. There are issues of dehumanization and light topics, dehumanization and social and political critique of Argentina in the 1970s. So they'll work in small groups. They're also going to do an essay, so they're going to practice their writing, and I'll be able to tell how they're doing in terms of understanding things. So it is a little bit different, and obviously it's a little more difficult, frankly. But we're still working on all the same skill building. The great thing about this, for which I am super grateful, is that we have the relationship with the kids going into this. And so I know my kids, I know their strengths, I know their areas that we need to focus on. And so we're really able to hit the ground running a little bit more than if this had happened at the beginning of the year. I think we would have been hosed trying to develop a relationship like this. But now we're just working with the relationships that we took so much time and energy and love to build.
Do you still have access to teachers' aides? Are they being used to focus on the smaller groups of kids that need extra help?
Absolutely, and that was really a magic act by one of my colleagues. My co-teacher in Adelante is Brian Donaldson. He's an amazing math teacher, and he's a total tech ninja. And so what'll happen is the kids will check into our class, and then they'll say, I need to work on math, and we can literally hit a link, and they go to a tutoring room to work on math, just a couple kids and one teacher, or a couple kids and one tutor. And we can do the same thing in at least 4 different subject areas.
Great. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, we've just got a minute or two left here. Anybody else want to jump on with a question? If so, just unmute yourself and identify yourself, because we can't all see everybody who's on.
Well, I'd like to say that it was nice to see everybody with hats on today, and it was a great meeting, and I feel at home now. Thanks. And Bill, I really like that when you had animal and vegetable on the screen at the same time. Bill Anderson.
Thanks, George.
Well, then,
I have a question.
Yep.
I have a question about takeout food.
Go for it.
And I guess I see Gary and Mark are still on. And when I was listening to some of the caveats that Bill was giving us, I feel like I've been courting risk unnecessarily, because in an effort to support local businesses, I have gone into the businesses, ordered takeout. I delivered some of it as recently as last night. I went to the Spice of Life and ordered takeout for 8 college students. And I'm starting to think, gee whiz, am I being a vector by engaging in that sort of thing?
Well, definitely don't lick the door handles. So that's rule number 1. Gary, go ahead.
Yeah. So what I would say is that you just need to be cautious when you pick stuff up. If you're going into the restaurant or the facility where they're cooking it, I would at this point wear a mask or some kind of covering over your face, as well as being sure that'll keep you from touching your face, which is the way you'd get it if you happened to have touched something with what we call a fomite, which is when somebody coughs or sneezes or breathes and gets a virus onto the packaging. So in this point, the CDC and everybody else, I think, is recommending that anyway when you go out. One thing that we did last night, we got takeout from Chez Twee. They brought it out and put it in the car, put it in the trunk. And then I got out of the trunk with gloves on and removed the packaging the way I described earlier and put it in our own plates, and then threw the packaging away and took off the gloves and washed my hands. So you don't need gloves as long as you're being scrupulously careful about washing your hands after touching anything that came from outside your house or there, and you could take some sanitary wipes or hand sanitizer with you to the venue where you're picking it up and where you're delivering it. Use that in between a couple of times if you want to be, and make sure you also take care about doing that before you touch door handles on your car. So those are all kinds of tricks, and you kind of have to have a mental map of what you're going to do and how you're going to do it to make sure that you're being protective there.
For the most part, it's common sense, I think, is what you just need to take precautions. And even with gloves, there's proper ways of putting them on and taking them off. I think Sanjay Gupta kind of gave a demonstration of that. So it might even complicate it more, and you might be worse off using gloves if you haven't seen that, how to use gloves properly, which would be easy to show and hard to explain. So I don't want to make these things complicated.
Thank you.
Good hand washing is the way to go. That's probably the most important advice.
Good point.
Thank you.
Being at a distance in Sarasota, Florida, I want to give a great shout out and thanks for all the coordination and the time that went into an excellent meeting and presentation. Thank you all. What a collaboration.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Bob. Glad to see your face.
Thank you.
So, John, you want to ring that bell one more time, and we'll, with that hats off from Bob Sunkel, we'll proceed.